All right, we're going to now move to the third video in this sequence of introduction to the interface, which is Affinity Photo. And I don't know what order you're watching these in, whether you're doing it nice and sequentially. I started with Publisher, I just did Designer, and now I'm doing Photo. So if you are watching them out of order, just note that I won't cover everything in this photo video if it was the same as in Designer as the same in Publisher. The one for Publisher is the longest one, and in an effort not to make the other two that long, I'm just going to tell you go watch Publisher, because whatever I'm covering, it works the same. But if you watch them sequentially, and who knows, I may remember something. I think I remembered a couple things in Designer that I could have showed you in Publisher, but I didn't think of it, or something happened in the demo that had me go, oh, and that too. So it probably is best to watch all three, and you'll pick up things from all of them that really do apply to all three and not necessarily specific to the particular app that I'm overviewing. So that being said, let's move on to the next thing, which is Photo. So just as with Designer and Publisher, Photo also launches into this screen that should pop up by default. If it doesn't, I mean, it by default says show on startup, but if you've already been in and you uncheck that, just go to File and pick New, and this will pop up. And I like to just have this always pop up. It just is easier because of the way they've redesigned this in the new version 2. It does all the same things in Publisher, Designer, and Photo. It has the same look and feel, all the same functions, and all of that. So at the time of this recording, I'm on version 204, build 1701, which I think is identical to the other two. They may not always be at the same build number, but they probably will be all at the same version. Just depends on whether the developers had to make extra builds before they could send it out to us users. And most of my add-ons, well, some of them may only be photo specific, but they're all listed here. So it probably shows all of them, but not all of them may be applicable to photo, or if I'm in Designer, it may not. But there's a lot of cross functionality, so I'm not sure what might only be used in one or the other. Wait for a nice sale and go browse their store, grab things. Don't buy them all at once. Buy them gradually, like I did. I started my collection, like 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago. I forget how long I've had it. I bought Publisher first, then I got Designer, and then I bought Photo. And yet I probably spend most of my time in Photo compared to the other two. But it's probably pretty evenly distributed. But I like Photo for doing lots of things with raster images. Again, you got your account settings, the new screen, which we'll go set up something in a minute, but it works the same with the categories, and you can add your presets and you can slide them around, and these are all the buttons for that. Go watch the overview for Publisher, because that's where you'll get the full details of how to add categories, rename, slide them around, delete them, and all that stuff. It also goes over my full explanation of whether to use RGB or CMYK, but we'll come back to this in a moment. Open, we'll just launch to a folder that I was last in. Where does it go this time? So, interesting. So, Photo remembers something different. I was making mock-up things last time, so it remembers that. Close that. Recent. I had to make a promo for this because I wanted Square. I really would wish that those that I'm doing affiliate stuff for, if they would always provide a square mock-up because I go and make them if I don't have one. It's just what I like to put in my newsletter. If you have something and it doesn't show up, I didn't mention this in the others, it's just because I'm using OneDrive or Dropbox and the file is saved to the cloud and there's not a local copy, and so sometimes it'll show me a thumbnail and often it just shows me nothing. So this is probably locally saved at the moment. If I send it off to a online only, I probably will get nothing. I'll just get the name of the file, so just know that. So yeah, so that's those. See, I have way more things in this one. Look at that, all my recent files. Can you tell I'm in photo more often? I don't have anything pinned, but if I wanted to, I don't know what I'd want to pin. A lot of times with photo, it's like a one-off thing, and then I'm done. So I don't know what I'd want to pin. But if I want to change the layout to a list, I can do that. That might be easier, especially when I'm working with photos, which I tend to have long names for. Templates works the same way. I'm getting lots of beeps saying that Dropbox is having trouble syncing something. Actually, I think I just triggered it to download things. I don't know. It just went crazy on me. I don't know if you heard that ding, 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 but it was Dropbox. Templates, totally explained that in the publisher, went over that in depth, and samples. That's what Serif's put for Affinity Photo for their samples. You can see they're different than the other two, and you can go find tutorials where they use these over on their YouTube channel, the one for Affinity Photo. So, well, let's go into new. I already fully explained all that. Super handy. Definitely play around with this, get comfortable with it. Let's see, for a photo you only get 3 tabs to play with. It's pretty basic. So you get dimensions for your layout, you get color scheme, and you get margins, which are just guides. You can use them or not. You can set them later. Don't have to do it now. It can be very handy though. I may even throw it on this time. But I might only want 1/2 inch. And if I want to make them change all at the same time, that little linking thing, if I make it look like it's got the little line that it's locked. To me it looks like, if you know anything about horses, it looks like the bit for the horse on the bridle. I don't know, if you don't know about horses and bits and bridles, it probably makes no sense, but if you know anything about horses, that's what it looks like. So when it looks like a bit on the bridle, it's locked, and now when I go off, they all change at the same time. If I don't want them all to be the same, you have to change it so it's unlinked. But there you go. So we'll put some margins in. Color, it's photo, it just depends. Am I going to print it or not? I might. It's a photo. Maybe I want it on photo paper. I don't know. I like CMYK. I mean, yeah, it's kind of more dull, boring colors and all that, but if I'm going to print, I'm going to see something that looks more like what I expected. But it depends on the project and depends on how you prefer doing it. And layout. What do we want to do? Oops. My phone is ringing and I'm just trying to silence it here. Vibrating rather. So let's do I don't know, a 4x6. That's a good photo size, 4x6. It doesn't matter too much for what I'm doing here, but that's how I would change it. 300 DPI if I were printing it, I'd want that. If you're just doing mock-ups, you can lower the DPI and you have a smaller file, which is better for loading images on a website. I have it in inches. Maybe you like millimeters or centimeters better if you're in metric. If we're doing mock-ups, we might prefer points for pixels. And when you get further along in your skills, you might switch to prefer linked, but we'll leave it at prefer embedded for now. So that's a 4x6, but you know, I was kind of thinking landscape, so we'll just flip it over here, landscape. That looks good. Let's go create. Voila, there it is. So you get your toolbars. They look different, although some of them are the same. If you had looked at the designer one and I went into the pixel persona, a lot of the tools will look the same over there, but you may have some additional tools when you're actually in photo itself that the pixel persona doesn't have. Same with if you're in publisher and you go to the photo persona. There are more tools when you go into the actual app itself, and some of them are things you'll find in the menus and so on. Some of them are studio panels, so but generally you'll see the same look and feel. So those are your tools. You can customize it by going to View, Customize Tools. There's a lot more tools here. There's probably more flyout menus, these little triangle things. I'm not going to take the time to try to customize it. I demoed that in Publisher and then again in Designer, and even made the mistake in Designer hitting the reset button instead of the close button, and I defaulted the whole thing. So just keep an eye on that. But play around curiously in the shapes. Oh no, there it is, cat tool. There's the cat tool. So that's the only way you can get to the cat tool, is if you go here and then you have to add it to the menu by itself, because I can't find any way to put it in the flyout menu. But there you go. So those are all the tools. As we go through different trainings, you'll get more familiar with all the tools, and some of them are brand new in version 2, so even I don't yet know what they are. I'm wondering what the spiral is right here. The twirl tool. It's just a new icon. It looked different before. So, but there you go. Those are your tools. If I reset it, I had done something with it before, but that's fine. So that's the default. That's probably what it looked like for you when you started. And so when you're watching trainings in photo, if I have different tools, you'll now know that you just go to View, Customize Tools, line it up so it looks like it, and then you can close it and you'll match me. You already should know by now, as you click down through these things, your context toolbar up here will change. Sometimes the things on this one-up menu will. And then there are your studio panels over here. Histogram, color, layers, channels, brushes, stock, navigator, transform, and history. And so this is how I would like to have it. Unless I'm doing something with actual photographs, histogram's not especially useful as a general studio panel. I mean, some people may like it in their workflow all the time. I only need it at times, so I'm going to close that out. I'm just looking to have this set up as to, what I'm going to use almost every time. Just like in the other two, I want my layers docked over here. So there it goes over there. That's my place for it. Channels, not going to use it that often. When I'm doing photography stuff, that becomes more important. But I do a lot of things in photo that aren't about photographs. Like maybe I'm using brushes. I'm going to keep the brushes. We'll put them up there. Stock, I guess I'll leave that there. I often go get pictures that I've already downloaded off of Pixabay. They do let you get to Pixabay and Pexels. They used to have, what's the third one? I'm drawing a blank. There's a third one that's real common that they used to have in here, but I don't know, they took it off. So now you can get to Pexels or Pixabay. But I often go to Pixabay, where I can go and bookmark them and put them in categories, and then I'll download the ones I want onto my hard drive. So I really don't need stock on there, but it can sometimes be handy when you just want a quick photo of something. Brushes, color. Navigator, I don't use it. I got a big monitor, don't need it. If you have a small screen, keep it. You might find it handy. Transform, use it all the time, needs to be much more prominent on the desktop. History, if I need it, I'll open it. I'll get rid of it. So I've got transform, color. Why they don't put swatches in here by default, I don't know, unless I didn't default it before I started my video. But that's alright. We're going to go get swatches. There they are. And it automatically stuck it right where I want it, right between color and brushes. I need stroke. That's the other one I want. I don't have stroke. Alright, well, it's kind of more of a vector thing, so I just thought I had it in here. Anyways, quick effects, that's a good one. So I'm going to look through and just kind of, I'm going to put quick effects right up here. Oops, it shortens it to FX. I'm going to put it next to brush. So I've got that. I tend to like to have only one column of these, but sometimes, like especially in Publisher, I really do have to divide them up into 2 tiers. But I don't like the 3 tiers that they often set it up as. Let's see, what else would I want in here? Adjustment. Assets could be useful. Batch I use, but when I use batch, I put it over here next to layers. History, info, library, links, macro, states. Maybe styles. Text, I'll bring that up when I need it. Let's use more in Publisher, but you definitely will use it. But when it gets into doing these things, you'll bring it up on when you're working on it. I might go put those assets in here too. Those assets. Why it wants to put it over there, I don't know. I'm going to stick it right up here next to, it's kind of similar to stock. But stock brings you to Pixabay or Pexels, whereas assets is like having images, but you've just saved it because there may be logos or things you're using like all the time, so that's handy. There. So, I'm not going to go into what I'll do over here. I tend to break things out, change them around, so if I'm doing a tutorial, just if you're watching the replay, pause it, and then match up your tools by going into View and Customize Tools. If I'm doing it live and you're really confused, just stop me and I'll give you a moment to, look at the tools. I won't go into how to change it because it's in here in these overviews, but at least I might pause long enough so you can look, and maybe you want to know what one of them's called, and I'll hover over it and say, oh, that's the flood select tool, or whatever it is, so you can know what it is and find it, and then you can go do that on your own. But the only other thing that I keep forgetting in the last 2 videos is how to save this. So I'm going to cover that now. So the studio panels. How do you save a studio panel setup? This is really handy for workflows. So if you go into Window, this is where all the studio panels are listed. Different for each app, but there's also Studio itself with a submenu. I saved one that was Affinity Factory Defaults. I'm not sure if I actually defaulted this before the video. I know I did on the other 2, so. But you can add a preset. So let's say I want to add this as my favorite studio layout. That sounds good enough. And now I've got it. It's now saved, so if I go back here and I go to Studio, my favorite studio layout. So let's say I had to re-record this video all over again, but I didn't want to lose what I just set up. So I just saved it as my favorite studio layout, and let's say I rewind in time and I go back to re-record this video, and I made one that said Affinity Factory Defaults. Boom. That should be what you saw when you first came into photo. Was that. So I can use that to, toggle for training purposes. I saved that one on purpose, but you have it anyways, because not only that, but they also have Reset Studio. If you want to hide the studio, get rid of all of it, then none of the studio panels around. You just have your tools and your context toolbars, but you can bring it back. There are also shortcut keys for this. Shift H toggles it. And then if you want to manage studio presets, you can go there, and this is where you could rename it or get rid of it if you didn't want it anymore. But you can probably using this mostly to rename, but maybe to delete some if you were just goofing around and you're like, I'm not going to use that preset. So close that out. But that's how you do it. And then what's handy about this is, let's say I go back to my favorite studio layout, which maybe this might be like my favorite studio layout for editing graphic to pictures that I got off Pixabay. Not photographs, but like, graphical artwork stuff. It's not really a photograph, that kind of thing, so that's my favorite studio. But then maybe I want to like pull my raw images in off of my Nikon camera, and now I've got to do things that have to do with developing it and stuff. That's where having things like channels and histograms and metadata and that kind of stuff are more useful. And so I might set up a whole different set of studio panels for developing my pictures. Now, this is the regular photo persona, so there's actually some other ones up here, and one of them's for developing. So, but there are things here for liquify persona, develop persona, tone mapping persona, and then there's the export persona. So, but you can save your studios, create a bunch of them, and use different ones when you go from one workflow into a totally different workflow. Just change which studio preset you're using here, and you can just move between them. That way you can keep your desktop clear of things you don't use too often, or you use them more for one function than another function. So create ones. Create one in each of these apps, because this thing applies to all three apps. They each do this thing. Create a studio preset that is the one I use for the training, and then when you're doing my training videos, switch to Linda's training preset, or whatever you want to call it, and use it during the training, and then move to the one that you prefer for your regular workflow. So we'll take a quick look at the other personas here. So I have to have something on my pixel layer in order to get to that one. That might even be true for all of them. So I would have to put something on the desktop. So and then export. Export is just a way to kind of like batch process exporting. It's a different way of doing it than going into File and doing export. They do a lot of the same things, but there's some differences, and at some point we'll go over that. But that's what that is. But the other ones I have to actually open something. So this is just an interface overview. I'm not going to pull in an image and try to do that. Well, maybe I will, just so you can see that they're also going to have studio panels. Where's the placing? There. So file, place. Let's go find something. I want a photograph. Let's see. Here is thinking. Probably should edit the video at this point because I'm not thinking fast enough. Affinity group. Let me just see if I can find something. I wonder if I just pull in the channel art. I just need something so it'll open the persona. When I do place, it makes this little icon that looks like a blue circle, so I just drop it. And the colors look different because I'm in CMYK. They look more vibrant if they're in RGB, but that's why it looks kind of like a different color thing because it's in CMYK. Now we can go. Please select a pixel layer or mask before entering the... Okay, well, alright, this is getting to be... We're going to add a mask on top of it, which will add a mask right here. You can see it in the layer panel. Now we'll let me do it. There we go. All that just so you could see the menus, the studio panel. So I've got this giant circle here for liquify. So I just want to use the hand so I'm not distracted because this is really just so you can see what's in here. So they've got we're in the liquify persona. We've got a mesh and a histogram, brush and navigator, some mask down here, history and channels. So those are your defaults, but you can go under window. These are the studio panels for this liquify persona. So you're only going to see the ones you need for this particular persona, and you can set up presets. There aren't my default ones because these are all specific to this particular liquify persona. And just like with all of them, there's the no layers. Do they not have layers? I don't work in this one very often, so no. So probably doesn't use layers per se because it's got a mask. So it's doing everything on a single mask. So anyways, that one's that. Then we could switch over. Please select an RGB pixel layer. Oh, so I guess I have to switch to RGB. So, well, this is getting to be way more than I was thinking. So we need to go into my document settings. Convert. Maybe it's that one. Here we go. We'll go to RGB. There. That's the way they usually look. Now, please select a P. Oh, didn't I? Alright. I guess you actually have to select the image itself. Nope, still doesn't like it. I don't know. We won't go in there. It's not a raw image. Pixel layer. And maybe it's not pixel. Maybe it's because I have the mask on it. Oh, I don't know. This is not something I do normally, so it may be that it's not masterized. See if that helps. There we go. Sometimes when you bring an image file in, it's not in the raster format that it wants, even though it is a pixel image. But now I can go in and we've got histogram, scope, metadata, focus. This is not a great example because it's not a photograph, and really I should be using a photograph here. So when those are your tools, if we go back here, commit or cancel, okay, cancel it. Yeah, but it does let me go right here. So this is the tone mapping persona, so we can add different tones and stuff. And it has these menus here. Overlays, histogram. So, same thing. Same thing with studio sets. Only one they don't have open is scope, but you can do your presets. So, and there you have it. So that's the overview. I have to cancel that because it doesn't want to just switch back. So there you go. So that's the overview of photo. Photo is going to be more for all your raster stuff. There is some vector things in it, like you can put shapes that are raster shapes on top of it. And so it will mix and match between some of the designer features, as designer does some raster things, some photo things. So you can use pen tools, which is going to be a vector thing. But some stuff, like the paintbrushes, are not going to be vector paintbrushes. They're going to be raster brushes. And we'll go over that in trainings, but those are very different brushes. So there you have it. So those are your 3 overviews. Make sure you watch all 3, because I remember things in one that the other one didn't have, and vice versa. And if there was something that I just completely spaced on and didn't cover, let me know, and I'll make another video to cover up the loose ends. I'll try to accumulate a few of them rather than putting out little short videos. I'll try to get several things that you guys point out that I forgot, or that you just really, really want to know, and it would be more convenient to make a quick video on it. So, but that's everything I can think of. Yeah, and then, you know, I think you probably all know how to save a file at the end. Just do save or save as, and you can save it as a template. But I'll make some other short little videos. Just, I think as I'm going through this, I'm thinking I might just want to put a little quick video together, soup to nuts, on how to make a super basic planner page, something really simple, just so you can go through all of the steps with using tools and studio panels, opening, saving, save to a template, that kind of thing. So as I've been doing this, there's probably one more video going on here. But I'm going to end now because this is about the interface. All right, thanks a bunch. Let me know if you have questions.